You can't keep giving away your tips, Maria. We're barely breaking even, the diner owner barked, his voice cutting through the hum of the kitchen. The waitress didn't flinch. She just used her hard-earned tips to cover a boy's meal. Maria Sanchez was working tables in a small Texas diner, scraping by on every dime, when a group of Marines arrived, and everything changed. Who was this boy? What brought the Marines there? What's the most selfless act you've ever seen make a difference? Let's find out. Welcome to True Quiet Stories. Let's uncover what happened in this story. If you love these stories, you can support the channel by liking and subscribing. In a small Texas town, the air was thick with the scent of mesquite and grease. Maria Sanchez worked there. She was 34 years old, a waitress at Rosie's Diner, a roadside stop on Highway 281 where the neon sign flickered against the dust sky. Maria's shifts were grueling, a whirlwind of taking orders, flipping trays and dodging spills, her hands calloused from years of carrying heavy plates. She tied her dark hair back with a faded scrunchie, her diner uniform a pale blue dress. With a stained apron, her warm brown eyes crinkling with a smile that greeted every customer, no matter how tired she felt. She lived in a cramped trailer just a mile down the road, a single-room space with a leaky roof, a fold-out couch, and a small table where she kept a cactus her brother had given her, its prickly resilience a quiet mirror of her own. Maria had grown up in Edinburgh, Texas, a town of just over 5,000 people, where the local economy leaned on agriculture, the fields of citrus and cotton stretching out under the relentless sun, though recent droughts had left many struggling to make ends. Meet Maria's life in Edinburgh was a daily grind shaped by necessity. Rosie's Diner was a local landmark, its peeling paint and retro booths a nostalgic draw for truckers, families, and the occasional tourist passing through on their way to the Gulf Coast. The jukebox in the corner played Tejano music, its upbeat rhythms a stark contrast to the weary faces of the regulars who gathered for cheap coffee and cheaper meals. Maria had started working there at 18, her first job after high school, a way to help her family after her father lost his farmhand gig to a corporate merger. Her parents had moved back to Mexico 5 years ago, hoping to reconnect with their roots, leaving Maria to fend for herself, her only sibling, a brother in Houston, too far to offer more than occasional calls. She'd once dreamed of opening her own bakery, her mother's tamale recipe, a cherished secret she longed to share. But the diner's meager wages barely covered her bills, let alone her ambitions. Her days a cycle of long shifts and longer. Nights, her evenings spent counting tips under the dim light of a single bulb. Maria had learned to make do with little, a lesson rooted in her childhood. Her father had been a farm worker, his hands rough from years in the fields, his stories of crossing the border a quiet testament to his determination, a determination Maria inherited in her own way. Her mother had been a seamstress, her fingers nimble as she stitched dresses for neighbors, her laughter a melody that filled their small home, a melody Maria clung to on the hardest days. Growing up, Maria had helped her mother with sewing, her small hands learning to thread needles, her evenings spent dreaming of a life beyond the fields. But those dreams faded when her parents left, their departure a bittersweet farewell marked by a tearful hug at the bus station, her mother pressing a rosary into her hand as a reminder of faith. Now, at 34, Maria kept that rosary on a hook by her trailer door, a small comfort as she navigated a life of solitude, her only companions the diner's regulars, truckers who tipped in quarters, a librarian who always ordered pie, and the occasional family who left behind crayon drawings on the placemats. Rosie's Diner was Maria's lifeline, a place where she found purpose despite the struggle. The owner, a gruff man named Ernesto, ran the place with a tight fist, his temper flaring whenever profits dipped, though he had a soft spot for Maria's work ethic, often slipping her an extra tamale from the kitchen when she stayed late. The diner's walls were lined with faded photos of Edinburgh's past, harvest festivals, a 1950s car show, a young Ernesto shaking hands with a local mayor, each image a reminder of a town that had once thrived. Now the diner relied on the trickle of travelers and the loyalty of locals, its Friday night specials a rare draw in a town where entertainment was scarce. Maria worked with a quiet efficiency, her smile a bridge between the kitchen and the tables, her kindness alight in a place that often felt shadowed by hardship. She'd seen the struggles of Edinburgh up close, the families who shared a single plate, the elderly who lingered to avoid empty homes, the children who reminded her of her own younger self, their eyes wide with hope despite the odds. It was for them that Maria kept going, her small acts of care a rebellion against the scarcity that surrounded her, a rebellion that would soon lead to a moment she'd never forget. The late afternoon sun cast a golden haze over Rosie's diner, its rays filtering through the dusty windows and painting streaks of light across the retro booths. The jukebox played a lively Tejano beat, its rhythm a backdrop to the clatter of plates and the hum of conversation as the dinner crowd trickled in. Maria Sanchez stood behind the counter, her faded blue uniform clinging to her skin in the Texas heat, her hands quick as she poured iced tea for a trucker perched on a bar stool. She wiped her brow with the back of her wrist, her dark hair slipping from its scrunchie as she balanced a tray of burgers for a family near the door, their laughter a bright spot in the otherwise weary atmosphere. The diner's ceiling fan spun lazily overhead, offering little relief, but Maria's warm smile never wavered, her presence a steady comfort to the regulars who filled the space with their familiar faces. Her gaze drifted to a small figure sitting alone at a booth near the jukebox, a boy who'd been coming in every few days for the past month, always with the same patched backpack and a cautious look that tugged at her heart. The boy's name was Daniel Lopez, though Maria didn't know that yet, didn't know the story behind his guarded posture, or the way he always sat facing the door as if expecting trouble. Daniel was 11 years old, a child who lived with his struggling mother in a rundown apartment on the edge of Edinburgh, a boy whose father had been a Marine, a man who'd served in Afghanistan in 2011, who'd carried out missions he couldn't forget. Daniel's father, Sergeant Carlos Lopez, had been a hero, leading his unit through a perilous operation in Kandahar, ensuring their survival during a Taliban assault, his own life taken by a sniper's bullet hours later. He'd left behind a legacy of courage, a silver star tucked away in a box, and a family that struggled to move forward without him. Daniel's mother, Elena, worked double shifts at a nearby gas station, her wages barely covering rent, leaving Daniel to fend for himself most afternoons. He'd learned to stretch every penny, often skipping meals to save for the next day, his small frame a testament to the hunger he hid behind a brave front. He'd stumbled upon Rosie's diner while searching for shade, drawn by the smell of fries wafting through the open door, a rare treat he could sometimes afford if he scavenged enough change from the park. Daniel sat quietly that day, his fries untouched as he stared at the scratched tabletop, his fingers fidgeting with the strap of his backpack, its faded fabric patched with duct tape. Maria approached with a glass of water, setting it down gently before leaning against the booth, her voice soft as she spoke. "Not eating today, kiddo?" she asked, noticing the way his shoulders slumped, his eyes darting to the empty coin pouch on the table. Daniel shook his head, his cheeks flushing as he mumbled, "I don't have enough." Maria's chest tightened, her mind flashing to the few dollars in tips she'd earned that day, the rent she still owed, the meal she'd planned to skip. Without hesitation, she reached into her apron pocket, pulling out a crumpled $5 bill, her last one for the shift, and slid it under his plate. "It's on me," she said with a gentle nod, standing up before he could argue. Daniel's eyes widened, a flicker of gratitude breaking through his guarded demeanor, his small hand reaching for the fries as Maria walked away, a quiet warmth settling in her heart. Ernesto, the diner owner, had been watching from the kitchen pass through, his arms crossed, his scowl deepening as he saw Maria's gesture. He waited until she returned to the counter before pulling her aside, his voice low but sharp. "We're barely breaking even, Maria. You can't keep doing this," he said, gesturing toward Daniel's booth with a jerk of his head. Maria met his gaze, her jaw set with quiet resolve. "He's hungry, Ernesto. I couldn't let him leave." "Like that?" she replied, her tone steady but firm. Ernesto sighed, his frustration evident in the way he rubbed his temple, though a flicker of understanding crossed his face. He'd seen the same struggles in Edinburgh, the same kids who reminded him of his own when they were young. He waved her off with a grumble, muttering about cutting costs as he turned back to the grill, leaving Maria to continue her shift, her focus already on the next table, her compassion unshaken. At a booth near the window, a regular customer sat, nursing a cup of coffee, his weathered hands wrapped around the mug as he watched the exchange with keen interest. His name was Miguel Torres, a 59-year-old mechanic who'd been coming to Rosie's for years, his grease-stained overalls a familiar sight, his quiet demeanor a contrast to the diner's lively hum. Miguel had noticed Daniel before, the boy's patched backpack and the way he counted his change with careful precision, but today, something else caught his eye. The glint of a dog-tag necklace peeking out from Daniel's collar as he adjusted his shirt. Miguel's breath hitched, his mind racing back to his own days in the Marine Corps, to a time when he'd served alongside men who wore tags just like that. He set his mug down, his fingers brushing against the faded tattoo on his wrist, a Marine Corps emblem he'd gotten after his last deployment. Leaning forward, he caught Maria's eye as she passed by, his voice low but urgent. "That boy? Where'd he get that dog tag?" he asked, nodding toward Daniel. Maria paused, glancing back at the booth, her brow furrowing. "I'm not sure," she admitted, her curiosity piqued. "He's been coming in for a while, but he doesn't say much." Miguel didn't press further, but a spark of recognition had already ignited in his mind, a memory of a name, a story, a brother-in-arms he'd thought long lost to time. He pulled out his phone, his fingers steady as he scrolled through his contacts, landing on a number he hadn't called in years. The diner buzzed around him, oblivious to the chain of events he was about to set in motion, a chain that would bring the past crashing into the present in a way no one could have predicted. Maria returned to her work, unaware of the storm brewing. Just beyond the diner's doors, her small act of kindness a ripple that would soon become a wave, one that would change her life, Daniel's life, and the heart of Edinburgh itself. The fading light of a Texas sunset spilled through the windows of Rosie's diner, casting a warm glow over the retro booths as the dinner crowd began to thin. Maria Sanchez stood near the jukebox, wiping down a table, her faded blue uniform, clinging to her skin in the lingering heat, her hands steady despite the long hours on her feet. The Tejano rhythm of the jukebox had given way to a slower mariachi tune, its melody weaving through the soft clatter of dishes being cleared by the busboy. Maria glanced toward the booth where Daniel Lopez had been sitting moments ago, his empty plate still on the table, a small victory that warmed her heart even as her stomach growled. She'd skipped her own meal to cover his with her last few dollars in tips. The diner's regulars lingered over their coffee, their conversations a gentle hum. Truckers swapping routes, a young couple sharing a slice of pie, an elderly man at the counter flipping through a worn paperback. Outside, the neon sign buzzed faintly, its pink glow flickering against the deepening dusk, the air heavy with the scent of mesquite from a nearby barbecue stand. Daniel had just stepped outside, his patched backpack slung over one shoulder, his sneakers scuffing the gravel lot as he headed toward the park to scavenge for change before dark. Maria watched him go through the window, a pang of worry settling in her chest, but her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of heavy footsteps approaching the diner, a steady rhythm that cut through the evening stillness. The glass door swung open, its bell jingling sharply, and a hush fell over the diner as a group of U.S. Marines in dress uniforms stepped inside, their polished boots gleaming under the fluorescent lights, their faces set with a quiet determination that drew every eye in the room. Maria froze, her rag slipping from her hand to the table, her breath catching as she took in their presence. 5 Marines, their medals catching the light, their postures straight as they scanned the space. The regulars turned in their seats, mugs halfway to their lips, their whispers replaced by a stunned silence. Ernesto, the diner owner, emerged from the kitchen, his apron smeared with grease, his brow furrowing as he wiped his hands on a towel. "What's this about?" he asked, his voice gruff but tinged with curiosity. The lead Marine, a woman with a steady gaze and a voice that carried authority, stepped forward, her uniform pristine, her eyes searching the diner. "We're looking for a boy named Daniel." "Lopez," she said, her tone firm but warm, And the waitress who's been helping him. Maria's heart skipped a beat, her hands trembling as she stepped forward, wiping them on her apron. "That's me," she said, her voice steady despite the sudden knot in her stomach. "Daniel was just here. He stepped outside a minute ago. Is he okay?" The Marine nodded, her expression softening as she gestured toward the door. "He's with us now. We've spoken to his mother. We're here because of his father, Sergeant Carlos Lopez." The name hung in the air, unfamiliar to Maria but heavy with meaning, a name that carried a story she couldn't yet grasp. The Marine turned to the crowd, her voice rising to address everyone. "Sergeant Lopez was a Marine who gave his life in Afghanistan, saving his unit in Kandahar. We've come to honor his legacy, and to thank the woman who's shown kindness. To his son." The diner erupted into murmurs, the truckers exchanging wide-eyed glances, the young couple pausing mid-bite, the elderly man setting down his book with a look of awe. The Marines stepped aside as Daniel re-entered, his mother, Elena at his side, both of their faces etched with a mix of wonder and nervousness. Elena, a weary woman in a gas station uniform, held Daniel's hand tightly, her eyes brimming with tears as she looked at the Marines. The lead Marine knelt before Daniel, holding out a small velvet box. "This belonged to your father," she said gently, opening it to reveal a silver star, its ribbon vibrant against the black lining. "He'd want you to have it." Daniel's fingers brushed the metal, his lips trembling as he whispered, "Thank you." The crowd broke into applause, some standing to clap, others pulling out their phones to capture the moment, their voices a chorus of admiration for a hero they'd never known, a hero whose son had sat among them unnoticed until this day. Maria's eyes welled up as she watched, her hand pressed to her chest, the weight of the moment sinking in. The Marine rose, turning to her with a nod of gratitude. "We've heard about what you've done for Daniel," she said, her voice carrying across the diner. "Your kindness hasn't gone unnoticed." She handed Maria an envelope, her smile warm. "This is from the Marine Corps community, a fund to help you start that bakery you've always dreamed of." Maria opened the envelope, her breath catching as she saw the check inside, enough to turn her dream into reality, her mother's tamale recipe finally within reach. The diner erupted into cheers, regulars clapping her on the back, Ernesto wiping a tear from his eye as he muttered, "You deserve it, kid." Edinburgh would never forget that day, a day when a small act of kindness brought a hero's legacy to light, a day that reminded them all of the power of compassion, a day that turned Rosie's Diner into a beacon of hope for a town in need. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to True Quiet Stories. For more untold tales of valor, hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.